Makinig, manood, nasa teleradyo. Makinig, manood, nasa teleradyo. Teleradyo, Teleradyo Marcelo. Sa gitna ng mapanubok na panahon, magkahatid sa kakibat ay diskusyon. Sama-sama tayo, kahit magkalayo. Sa programang ito, tiyak ang pagkatuto. Teleradyo, Teleradyo Marcelo. Teleradyo, Teleradyo Marcelo. Teleradyo, Teleradyo Marcelo.
A pleasant day, dear science enthusiasts. I am Sir Russell Pueyo, and I am delighted to share with you an interesting topic for today. I hope you take it to heart all the things in this video lesson. For today's lesson, pieces of evidence that evolution occurs in nature. For most essential learning competency, explain how fossil records, comparative anatomy, and genetic information provide evidence for evolution. And for our objective, enumerate direct and indirect pieces of evidence and how they support the theories of evolution. Hello, dear students. Another insightful topic will be given to you today. Last time, you had a wonderful learning about mutations. Today, we will discuss the pieces of evidence that evolution occurs in nature. Darwin's theory of evolution was eventually accepted when scientists were able to supply the proofs that Darwin himself had been unable to provide. Natural selection provides us with a framework in understanding the principles of evolution. So Darwin's idea of evolution has been modified by new evidence that have been gathered by modern scientists. So these are classified as direct and indirect evidence. So let us now discuss direct evidence. Direct evidence of evolution is usually observed in places where we can directly examine actual changes in a population of organisms within a particular period of time. So through experiments in a laboratory, scientists can observe the process of evolution, particularly of organisms that have a very short lifespan like bacteria and insects. We have seen through many real examples and observations that changes that occur in an animal during its lifetime are not passed on to the animal's offspring. For example, if a dog's ears are cropped short, its puppies are still born with long ears. Okay, so these and other examples does not explain how life formed and became the way it is. So let us now move to indirect evidence. Fossils as concrete evidence of change. A fossil is a remain or piece of evidence of a living thing. So the most common fossils are bones, shells, and seeds or pollen grains. Most fossils are incomplete because only the hard parts of an organism, such as bones or teeth, become fossils. The soft tissues either decay or are eaten away before fossils can form. Okay, so most fossils are formed when the whole part of an organism becomes buried in sedimentary rocks, muds, or slits. So layers or strata of sedimentary rocks provide the most important evidence about the evolution of plants and animals. So let us now discuss the different types of fossils. The first one is petrified fossils. So petrified fossils form when minerals in the mud and sand replace the hard parts of the organism, such as when bones were buried under layers of sediments. So here in our example, so this is the ancient starfish which undergo the process of petrification. And this one undergo the process of replacement, which is produces an exact copy of the original plant or animal. The second one is imprints. So imprints form when soft thin body structures such as feathers and leaves, like here in our example, okay? So impressions in soft sediments such as muds happen when mud hardens into rock. The imprints are then preserved as fossils. The third one is molds and casts. It is formed when an organism is buried into a sediment that hardens into rock. It preserves a three-dimensional impressions of remains buried in a sediment. So when we talk about molds, it is a hollow area in sediment in the shape of the organism. And cast, it is a solid copy of shape of an organism. The next one is trace fossils. Trace fossils are marks or evidence of animal activities. Tracks, footprints, trails, and burrows are examples of trace fossils. The third one is preservation of entire organism. It is quite rare to excavate the preserved whole body or complete section of an organism. For example, amber. Amber is formed as a hard substance when the resin or sap of evergreen trees hardens. So when flies or other insects are trapped in the sticky resin, they get preserved perfectly as the resin hardens into amber, producing a transparent covering. So let us now discuss fossil record. Exploration of layers of sedimentary rocks from recent layers to the oldest layers has enabled geologists to develop a timetable of the Earth's geologic past known as the geologic timescale. This fossil records of the Earth's history contains a tabulated, standard, international record of sedimentary rock layers and their fossils, which clearly demonstrate that living things and their way of life evolve or change over time. Although the fossil record is not complete and never will be because many organisms have come and gone without leaving any fossils, it does provide an ample evidence that evolution has indeed occurred. Fortunately, fossils are but one piece of evidence of evolution. So let us now proceed to embryological evidence of change. An embryo is an organism in its early stages of development. Scientists observe that at some point during the development process, embryos of many different animals appeared so similar that it was difficult to tell them apart. For example, the embryos of a fish, tortoise, chicken, and human appear almost identical in their stages. The growth and development of an embryo is controlled by its genes. Okay? As the embryos continue to grow and develop, other genes take over as embryo becomes a fish, a chicken, a rabbit, or a human, depending on its gene structure. However, the similarities in the early stages of embryo development are further evidence that living things have evolved from earlier living things and that many living things do share a common ancestry. So let us now discuss anatomical evidence of change. Homologous and analogous structure. The anatomy of animals also provides scientists with pieces of evidence to determine the ancestry among organisms. These similarities indicate that each organism has evolved from a common ancestor. The whale became adapted to an ocean environment as the structure of its bones or flippers gradually changed to those found in the fins of a modern whale. Similar structures such as this evolved from the same ancestral body parts but have different functions are called the homologous structure. Analogous structures, on the other hand, have similar functions but different anatomical structure. Some examples are the butterfly wings and bat wings, which is used for flying. Let us now discuss vestigial structure. Certain parts of an organism have no particular function. These structures were believed to be remnants of organs presumed to be present, well-developed, and functional into the ancestor. Body parts that are inherited but reduced in size and often unused are called vestigial structure. Existence of these structures indicates that changes have taken place through time and that the ancestral roots of the organisms with these structures may be the same. Examples are the wings of flightless cormorant bird. Their little wings help them maintain their balance, but this is not used for flying. Okay, another example is the pythons, which have the vestigial hip bones, an evidence of a legged ancestor. So let us now proceed to biochemical pieces of evidence. Fossil records allow scientists to make predictions that can be tested. Biochemical findings also provide scientists with evidence to support the idea that if species have changed over time, then the genes that determine their characteristics should have also changed. DNA, nucleic acids as biomolecular evidence of change. Scientists also use the method of DNA comparison to show relationships among many other types of organisms. We all know that genes are located in the chromosomes, which are made of DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid. From an evolutionary point of view, the more closely related two living things are, the more similar the sequence of their DNA will be. Genetic differences shows how much evolution has taken place. In 1985, the DNA was taken and analyzed from the muscle tissue of a preserved quagga, a South African mammal which was stored for more than 100 years in a museum. The quagga was described to be similar to zebra, which stripes concentrated only on its head, neck, and the front of its body. The quagga's DNA was compared with that of a modern-day zebra. Okay? The DNA sequence from the two samples was 95% identical. So it was concluded that the quagga and the zebra were indeed close relatives who share a common ancestor. Interestingly, human and chimpanzee DNA sequences differ only by 1.6%. The last one is proteins as biomolecular evidence of change. Aside from analyzing the DNA structure to show relationships between organisms, variations are formed in the protein structure of one group of organisms as it evolves into another group. Organisms of the same group should have the same DNA sequence for a specific structure of protein. We all know that proteins are molecules that are used to build up and repair our body parts. So scientists believe that the more similar structure of protein molecules of different organisms is, the more related they are and the more recent the existence of their common ancestor. Given all the concept learned from this video lesson, let us evaluate what you have learned. Tell whether the statement is true or false. Number 1. Natural selection provides us with a framework in understanding the principles of evolution. Your answer, please? The answer is true. Number 2. Imprints are formed when an organism is buried into a sediment that hardens into rock. Your answer, please? The answer is false. Molds and casts are formed when an organism is buried into a sediment that hardens into rock. Number 3. Exploration of layers of sedimentary rocks from recent layers to the oldest layers has enabled geologists to develop a timetable of the Earth's geologic past known as the geologic timescale. Your answer, please? The answer is true. Next, number 4. Homologous structure have similar function but different anatomical structure. What's your answer? The answer is false. Analogous structure have similar functions but different in anatomical structure. And number 5, DNA and proteins are example of biomolecular pieces of evidence. Your answer, please? The answer is true. Thank you for staying up to this point of my video lesson. I hope you enjoy it too as much as I did. Again, good day and thank you for watching. A pleasant day, dear science enthusiasts. I am Sir Russell Pueyo and I am delighted to share with you an interesting topic for today. I hope that you will take it to heart all the things in this video lesson. For today's lesson, Evolution, changes in organism over time. For our most essential learning competency, explain the occurrence of evolution. And for our objectives, number 1, define evolution and describe how the process takes place. Number 2, explain Darwin's theory of evolution. And number 3, differentiate Lamarck's theory of evolution from Darwin's theory. Let me start the lesson with this quote by Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. Now, I want you to ponder on this thought, and we will get back on this before my presentation ends. When we say evolution, it means a change in a population of organisms over time. Many people think of evolution as something that takes a long period of time, something that might require millions of years, but that is not always the case, okay? For example, a single-celled organism such as bacteria ride an evolutionary fast track. So within weeks, a population of bacteria can virtually reinvent themselves because they reproduce quickly, generate mutations at a rapid rate, and share their genetic informations among the different members in the populations. So they evolve quickly due to their adaptive characteristics that allowed them to survive the killing effects of drugs. So that's why the antibiotic resistance is a startling example of evolution. Biological evolution is a powerful and important process, a process which over billions of years gradually selects the organisms that are better adapted to their environment to continuously change life and make all living organisms in our world the way they are today. Evolution is not a finished event wherein humans are the final product. Rather, it is a continuing process which has been changing and forming life on Earth for billions of years and continues to do so for as long as organisms are being born, dying, and competing for what they need to survive and reproduce. How does evolution occur? In the mid-19th century, biologists were already familiar with the idea of evolution, both from written works and observation. Many of them had read an essay written by Thomas Malthus titled The Essay on the Principles of Populations. Thomas Malthus concluded that population growth of organisms would always be controlled by the availability of food through competition. At that time, people were also practicing traditional plant and animal crossbreeding or artificial selection, in which breeders could produce plants and animals with new and desired characteristics but can be passed on from generation to generation. The idea of evolution was also reinforced in 1753 by Carolus Linnaeus in his publication Systema Naturae, in which he grouped plants and animals based on their similar characteristics. Okay. His work revealed that animals such as whales, bats, apes, humans, cats, which are different in appearance, forms, and habits, were fundamentally similar in structure and development. Today, this puzzle can be readily explained by evolution from a common ancestor. A major obstacle in the acceptance of the idea that organisms change over time was the belief of the general public in the doctrine of creationism. Okay? The majority of people believed in the biblical story of creation that species had been created by a supreme being, as such by God. Okay? However, creationists have trouble explaining many known facts such as fossilized remains that were starting to be excavated by the paleontologists. Fossils reveal the progression of change from simple to complex forms over millions of years that showed concrete evidence that organisms might have changed in the past. The theory of evolution does not deny God of his role in the creation. Rather, it does recognize that species have the ability to change over time in response to the environmental struggle. So due to that initial belief, The theory of evolution was not widely accepted for several decades until theories for its underlying mechanisms were available. So let us now proceed to Jean-Baptiste Lamarck and Charles Darwin. Both had some similar and some different ideas about how life on Earth came to be. Okay, unlike most people at that time, these two biologists both believed that life had changed gradually over time and was still changing, that living things changed to be better suited and adapted to their environment. So, and all organisms are related. So they also both agreed that life evolved from pure, simpler organisms to more complex organisms. So let us now discuss Lamarck's theory of evolution. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck was known for the popular theory of the early 19th century known as Lamarckism. He proposed that the characteristic that an animal acquired during its lifetime in response to life struggle or felt needs could be passed on to its offspring. So he also known for the theory of use and disuse, in which he stated that if a certain structure were not used, they would disappear. And if a structure was used often, it would develop further. His famous example to illustrate this idea was that of the giraffe's neck. He explained that the early giraffes had short necks and short legs. Due to competition for low-growing grasses, giraffes began to stretch their necks and forelegs to reach the leaves of tall trees. The constant stretching made their neck and forelegs longer. He argued that this effort of wanting a long neck altered the animal's hereditary materials so that the longer neck was passed on along to its offspring. When this giraffe reproduces, the beneficial qualities it has developed over the years. So in this case, a longer neck would be passed on to the next succeeding generations. That our present-day giraffes are long-necked and long-legged. So this example did not bring Lamarck great respect and was cited as a classic case of scientific error by the scientific community due to its flaw that the environment acting directly on the organisms caused their change. So let us now proceed to Darwin's theory of natural selection. Charles Robert Darwin, a naturalist, is credited for developing the theory of natural selection, most commonly known as the survival of the fittest. On December 27, 1831, Darwin left England aboard a sailing ship HMS Beagle for a scientific investigation. His 5-year journey helped him gather his evidence and formulate his idea. Okay? He became more and more convinced of his theory of evolution by natural selection. So, however, Darwin was reluctant to publish his ideas because they went so strongly against the ideas of the day, and he thought that the society was not yet ready for his belief. In 1858, Darwin was prompted to publish his work after reading the essay of his colleague, the English naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace, who had come up with the same theory. Interestingly, both Darwin and Wallace knew nothing of genes and chromosomes, but they provided an explanation for both the diversity and the similarities between living organisms. On November 24, 1859, Darwin published the theory in his book entitled On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. His theory was supported and greatly influenced by the biological, geological, and geographical observations he had made during his 5-year journey. He was forced to defend his idea not only against scientists who demanded hard evidence, but also to philosophers, theologians, and general public who thought that the idea was heretical. Okay? Despite of the controversies, a few people saw the good science in his theory and gained the acceptance slowly from biologists around the world. So today, new areas in the field of genetics have given scientists new insights into how natural selection brings about the evolution of species. In the present times, almost all scientists in the world accept the idea of evolution as the basis for diversity of life on Earth. and on the origin of species by natural selection fueled an explosion in biological research and knowledge that continues until these days. Today, evolution is biology's great unifying core theme, the idea that makes sense of all we know about life. So let us now discuss what Darwin believed. Darwin believed that the desires or felt needs of animals had nothing to do with how they evolved and that changes in an organism during its lifetime did not affect the evolution of the species. He said that organisms, even of the same species, were all different and that those variations helped them survive in their environment and have more offspring. So the offspring are born with their parents' helpful traits, and as they reproduce, individuals with that adoptive trait make up more of the population. Other individuals that were not so well adapted die off. So let us now proceed to Darwin's explanation on the giraffe. According to him, giraffe ancestors had shorter necks. Some giraffes with chance mutations or with different traits at that time produced longer necks. Since they had long necks, they were able to obtain plenty of food, survive, and reproduce. The longer necks were inherited by their offsprings. Okay? Continued natural selection pressure led to enhance the survival of the individual with very long necks. Okay? Which therefore increased their chance of survival in the population. So competition for food led to the extinction of short-necked giraffes as they failed to survive long enough to produce offspring. Ultimately, the entire giraffe population was composed of long-necked offspring that we see today. Darwin's natural selection. During his travel around the world studying plants and animals he found on the voyage, Charles Darwin observed that in the natural world, the production roughly balanced death with illness, accident, and old age. He became aware of the wide variations in the characteristics between members of the same species and observed that many of these variations were inherited. He proposed that individual whose characteristics would give them strategies to better survive and reproduce would leave behind more offspring than less well-adapted members. The successful characteristics are more widespread in the next generation as these adopted traits were passed on to succeeding generations. So this is the concept of natural selection. Darwin proposed that over many generations, the characteristics of a population could change so significantly that a new species is formed. Okay? The theory of natural selection attempted to explain the causes of evolutionary change among organisms. Okay? The theory has been divided into 5 parts to explain clearly how evolution happens in nature. The first one is overpopulation. The number of offspring is usually greater than the available resources necessary for organisms to survive. Organisms can die from many causes, such as disease, starvation, or predation. The environment cannot support every organism that is born. Many died before they are able to reproduce. For example, loggerhead sea turtles. Loggerhead sea turtles, for example, may have 3 to 8 nests during a season with each nest containing about 100 ping-pong-like eggs. Only about 1 out of 1,000 lives to reproduce. Most of them never make it to adulthood as high tides, beach erosion, and plant roots can destroy a nest. So many predators such as raccoons, crabs, and foxes eat turtle eggs. Okay? Upon hatching, the young turtles face these predators again, as well as seabirds. Okay? Some may even get stuck on the beach and die. Then the hatchling left are only a small fraction of those laid by a single turtle. If all of the eggs hatch and each of them laid as many eggs, there would be too many turtles for the turtle's environment to support. Number 2 is struggle for existence. Every organism must struggle to survive. One reason why all organisms survive is that they must compete for the limited resources available in the environment. All organisms struggle for food, territory, and other necessities for life. They also struggle to get away from predators and to overcome disease. Competition may be active, as in the battle between two predatory animals over a single prey. For example, the mass exodus of 1.5 million wildebeest on their eternal search for water and greener pastures is one of the greatest natural spectacles on Earth. Both crocodile and wildebeest struggle to survive. The crocodile, by eating the wildebeest, succeeds in the struggles and survive. So the wildebeest does not survive. However, it leaves more fit wildebeest behind to continue the generation. The third one is presence of variation. There is variation within a species. Traditionally, species is a group of organisms that share similar characteristics and that can interbreed to produce fertile offspring. Okay? Within the advent of molecular cloning, however, this definition of species needs to be modified as it is now possible to artificially interbreed two organisms that belong to two different species. Okay, there are physical variations or differences among members of species. For example, a pride of cheetahs comprises different members. Not all their members are exactly the same. If you look at the spots on the cheetahs, you will notice that they do not all have the same color streaks or arrangements of spots. Aside from physical differences, there are also diversity in skills and behavior, such as differences in how fast the horses can run. If organisms were all the same, none would be better suited than any other, and selection cannot occur. So those that survive in the competition possess variations that give them advantage over the other animals. The fourth one is survival of the fittest. Some variations allow members of a species to survive and reproduce better than others. If an organism has a trait that helps it to survive or reproduce, it is more likely to survive and be able to reproduce. For example, a faster cheetah is more likely to catch a gazelle and survive, and a faster gazelle is more likely to escape the cheetah and survive. The last one is variations can be transmitted. Organisms that survive and reproduce pass their traits to other offspring, and the helpful traits gradually appear in more and more of the populations. It means organisms with traits that well suited to the environment survive, reproduce, and successfully pass on their traits to the next generation of offspring. So these variations enable them to fit into their environment, and to those who lack of these variations are eliminated. If more of the organisms with helpful traits survive, then in the following generations, more and more of the populations will have that trait. Given all the concepts learned from this video lesson, let us evaluate what you have learned. All you have to do is fill in the missing word or words in each sentence. Number 1. Charles Robert Darwin is credited for developing the theory of blank. What's your answer? Yes, the answer is natural selection. Number 2. Blank means a change in a population of organisms over time. What's your answer? Correct. The answer is evolution. Number 3. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck was known for the popular theory of the early 19th century known as blank. What's your answer? Good. The answer is creationism. Number 4. The blank stated that if certain structure were not used, they would disappear, and if a structure was used often, it would develop further. What's your answer? Very good. The answer is theory of use and disuse. And number 5, the theory of natural selection, commonly known as the blank. What's your answer? Very good. The answer is survival of the fittest. Thank you for staying up to this point of my video lesson. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. At the start of this lesson, I have shown you a quote to ponder, right? Okay, can you share it with me? Well, brilliant. See, change is really inevitable because our Earth and our life here on Earth is so dynamic. Yet, we need to be reminded on how we should respond to these changes positively to make a better Earth. Again, good day and thank you for watching.
Makinig, manood, nasa teleradyo. Makinig, manood, nasa teleradyo. Teleradyo, teleradyo Marcelo. Sa gitna ng mapanubok na panahon, magkahatid sa kakibat ay diskusyon. Sama-sama tayo, kahit magkalayo. Sa programang ito, tiyak ang pagkatuto. Teleradyo, teleradyo Marcelo. Teleradyo, teleradyo Marcelo. Teleradyo, teleradyo Marcelo.